Welcome everybody back into Nerd Sesh. As always, I'm Carson Breber and alongside me is Logan Camden. And today we are on to the final two divisions in our NFL season preview, starting with the NFC East, which of course is home to the reigning NFC champion Philadelphia Eagles, a division that did not feature a team with a losing record last year, Logan. So certainly a lot to live up to from last year. Who do you have atop this division?
Atop this division, I have the Dallas Cowboys, actually.
Whoa!
And I wasn't expecting to go this direction either, but I don't really have a whole lot of concerns about the Cowboys in the regular season, Carson. In fact, I like a lot about the Dallas Cowboys in the regular season. I think you've got a top 10 quarterback in Dak Prescott, who at his best is mistake-free, is a great game manager, one of the best game managers in all of football. I think you have really good weapons around Dak, with Brandon Cooks, with the addition of him, with Michael Gallup, with CeeDee Lamb, of course, at the top, with my man Tony Pollard. And I think Deuce Vaughn is going to eat a little bit this year, too. I think you've got a really solid line that has been rebuilding over the past few seasons, but you've still got rocks. Tyler Smith, I think, is a super underrated left guard, one of the best guards in all of football. It's not the boys that we know from the past decade, but this is still a really solid foundational line that, like I said, improved a lot last season, and I think is scaled to improve again next season. I think this is a really solid defense with a Defensive Player of the Year candidate in Micah Parsons. You've got a great secondary with Gilmore, with Diggs, with Curse. I do not like the linebacking core. That's the one aspect, I think, of this team that I'm a little shaky on, Carson, the depth, specifically the linebacking core. But what I'm getting at here is the Cowboys are really, really talented. They were top 5 on offense and defense last season. I like their coaching staff. The only real big difference is that Mike McCarthy is going to be calling plays this year. I think they're going to be about the same. I think people kind of overrate how good Kellen Moore was last season specifically. Kellen Moore was one of the best young offensive coordinators in football, and I think he still is. But last season struggled, and I think that was kind of overrated. I think it was a big aspect of why Dak Prescott threw so many interceptions last season. So I think we're going to see maybe not tangible improvement with McCarthy calling plays, but at least somewhere around the same area. And again, I don't want to overblow what we saw in a preseason game with a drive from Will Grier, but I mean, hey, man, if Dak Prescott can call plays from the sideline, I think that bodes well for at least Dak knowing the playbook, knowing what they should call in certain scenarios against certain coverages. I trust Dak at least to make calls on the fly a little more. So, Carson, honestly, I have no questions about the Cowboys being great during the regular season. I think Dallas is a lock to have double-digit wins again this year. Mm-hmm. My only concern about is them in the playoffs, and they have repeatedly burnt me. I've got a list of teams, Carson, the Philadelphia 76ers burn me every year in basketball. I'll throw the Dallas Cowboys right in there with a team that burns me every year in football. And so that's where the concerns come down with me at Dallas is, what are they going to do in the playoffs? This is a great regular season team. They've got a lot of talent. I love their roster, and they've been successful in the regular season year after year. It is about getting over that divisional round hump. This is a stat that I love to regurgitate every time we bring up the old boys. Dak Prescott has the most divisional round losses without a victory. He's 0-3. He shares that record with Tony Romo. The divisional round has been the Achilles heel of the Dallas Cowboys for the last 15 years. So I'm going to bank on the Cowboys being great again in the regular season. Will I take them to make a deep playoff run? I just can't predict that yet because the boys get me every year that I buy in. So I have the Cowboys winning one more game than the Eagles. I just think the Eagles lost a lot last season, Carson, and it's going to be hard to be as dominant as they were last year. I still love their roster, but I think with a tough schedule, with losing a lot of pieces, I just think it's going to be hard for Philly to be as dominant as they were last year. So I have the Cowboys right now at 11 wins.
Oh my God. So you are way lower on Philly than I expected, because that's really what I was reacting to. We have the same expectations for Dallas. I have them winning 11 games. I considered having them winning 12 games. I think that they are as safe of a regular season bet and as complete of a football team as we have in the NFL right now, or at least they are in that top tier. They won 12 games last year, despite that being Dak's worst season in years, where he was very turnover prone and where he missed 5 games. They won 4 of those games with Cooper Rush, but their offense was more limited, not as productive. Their defense was just that damn good. So I think this is an impressively balanced offense. They were top 10 in
Mm-hmm.
both passing and rushing last year. I think that rushing attack is actually going to be more efficient now with more Tony Pollard, less Zeke. I think that Pollard is very clearly a top 10 back in the NFL. And I think that Dak is a top 10 quarterback to me. We did our rankings for this. He came in at exactly number 10. I understand that last year was a down year, and I think at times he was overly aggressive pushing the ball downfield, and that led to too many mistakes. But his pace over the previous 3 seasons was 5150 yards, 35 touchdowns to 11 and a half interceptions. The offense was dominant when he played last year. They averaged 30 points per game, and the year before that, they had been the number one scoring offense in football. So I think Dak is very good, but I think he's also got a great running game to lean on. And I think the weapons are pretty darn good. Maybe they take a slight step back this year. You replace Noah Brown with Brandon Cooks in the receiving core. To me, that's probably a slight upgrade. And I think that Jalen Tolbert is going to be a really solid number 4 receiver. He's a talented young guy. To me, the downgrade is going to be going from Dalton Schultz, who really had established himself as a top 10 tight end, a very reliable possession target, to Jake Ferguson or Schoonmaker, who they took at tight end. I don't see either of those guys reaching that level of productivity. And I do think it'll be a bit of an adjustment going away from Kellen Moore. But overall, I think this line is going to be better than last year with Tyron Smith coming back, top 10 quarterback, good weapons on the ground and through the air. I just think this is going to be a pretty elite offense like it has been for the last 2 seasons when Dak is healthy. And then defensively, it's damn good as well. The foundation is an elite pass rush. They led the league in pressure rate last year. Obviously, Micah Parsons is one of the absolute best. Him and DeMarcus Lawrence is an elite duo. Dorrance Armstrong had a really strong pass rushing season last year. I like the pickup of Stephon Gilmore in the secondary a lot. This is the rare unit that has demonstrated in back-to-back years an ability to really force turnovers at a high level. They've led the league. Oftentimes, you look at that as something that can be a bit of an outlier and a sign of regression. But I think with the pass rush and with the ball hawking potential in this secondary, they are just really, really good at forcing turnovers. And they were great situationally last year. Top 10 in third down percentage and red zone percentage defensively. So I look at this. They've won 12 games in back-to-back years. I don't see reason for regression here. I probably like their roster maybe even a little bit more. It's a tough schedule, though, with a strong division, having to play the AFC East, having to play the NFC West, which I don't think is great, but there are 2 really strong teams in that division. So I feel good about 11 games, but I think that this is probably going to be a top 10 team on both sides of the ball or very close to it, and there's not that many in the NFL that can say that. So I think they are a team that has an outside shot at the Super Bowl. It's going to be a question of coaching and of if Dak can hold up that level of play for 3 or 4 consecutive games. Those are real questions, but I agree with you. Regular season, they should be really good. I don't think they're going to be better than the Eagles, though. So explain to me your concerns with Philly and why you have them regressing so much.
There's just a lot of turnover, and then it's a lot of like what you said about Dallas with the division and who they play too. I think this is a division that's so tough that they're going to beat up on each other. Like I can see the Giants or the Commanders stealing a game. So it's a tough division. It's a tough schedule. And I want to be clear too. I have the Eagles winning 11 games too. Whoever wins that tiebreaker, I gave the tiebreaker to the boys. I have them with the exact same record. So maybe the Eagles do come out on top. Right now, I gave the tiebreaker to Dallas. It's just so hard to repeat, and then there's a lot of turnover. Now, that being said, I think that they replenished their forces really well in this offseason.
Yeah.
Carson, we're going to do a quick trivia time question here, Carson. How many teams have returned to the Super Bowl after losing in the season previous?
Okay, let's think. You do not have the Seahawks. They won their first and then they lost. I'm just thinking about teams that have been back-to-back years. Have the Pats done this?
The Pats did it in 2018, Carson. They're the most recent team to do it. Since before then, you have to go back to your Bills from 1991 to 93. So In the history, since the merger in the Super Bowl era, only 8 teams have returned to the Super Bowl since losing in the season previous. The 71 Cowboys, the 72 Dolphins, the 73 Vikings, the 87 Broncos, the 91 and 93 Bills, and the 2018 Patriots. Only 3 of those teams have won. The 71 Boys, the 72 Dolphins, and the 2018 Patriots. So everybody, to state the obvious, it's really hard to repeat after going to the Super Bowl, right? And we've seen some catastrophic failures over the past 10 seasons when you look at teams going from appearing in a Super Bowl to attempting to go back. 6-10, the 2016 Panthers, that's what they go. The 2019 Rams go 9-7. The 2020 49ers go 6-10. Like, it's just hard, man, and a lot of teams have let us down. Now, I don't expect it to be an absolute disaster, but again, when you reach these high heights, when the Eagles, when the 49ers go to the Super Bowl, right, there's going to be a lot of guys who are offered jobs. They lose DC Jonathan Gannon, they lose Javon Hargrave, CJ Gardner-Johnson, Marcus Epps, both of their starting linebackers, TJ Edwards and Kaiser White, Isaac Sumalo, and Miles Sanders. But I don't know, Carson. I don't know if there's been a team that has been as dominant in the year previous that has killed an offseason and has been so readily prepared for this turnover. I mean, this defense I still think is going to be great. You have Nakobe Dean stepping into the middle. They draft Jordan Davis last year. They get Jalen Carter this year, which is going to be, I mean, damn, man, maybe the best interior D-line duo in football in a couple years. Like, maybe this year. Like, I believe in both of those guys. You lose Miles Sanders, who I don't absolutely love. You get in 2 backs who I think I like more in DeAndre Swift and Rashad Penny. You bring in Terrell Edmonds. I'm going to spoil it for you, Philly fans. I love Terrell. He's a good tackler. Oh, man, he's going to get burnt probably 5 or 6 times this year. You're going to want to throw a remote through your television. The bottom line is I think the Eagles are going to be great. And they, like I said, dude, I don't know if I've ever seen a team that has gone to a Super Bowl that has been this dominant in one season lose this much talent and replenish it as well as Philly did. It's really nothing against Philly. I believe in Jalen Hurts. I believe in the weapons here. I believe in the trench dogs that they have up front to establish this running game. I think the Eagles are going to dominate the trenches, and I think they are built to dominate in the playoffs again if they can stay healthy. So the record is not symbolic of, you know, the team, the talent. It's simply a byproduct of the division that they play in, of the schedule that they're going to face, and it's just hard winning 14 and 13 games, man. So I expect the record to drop off a little more. But I still think the Eagles could win this division. I think the Cowboys and them are similar in a talent level. So I have both of them winning 11 games. But damn, man. Carson, I mean, this is a team that is built for the next 5 to 10 years, like with the young talent they have on this roster. At least, I mean, I expect the Eagles to be fighting for the NFC Championship for the next 5 seasons concretely, man. I think this team is loaded for the future.
Yeah, as good as the Cowboys are, I think this Eagles team is one of the most talented that we have ever seen. I thought that was the case last year. I don't know if we have seen many teams at all who are that loaded at every single position group, it felt like. And I love what they did to replenish their losses. We start offensively. I think they have every reason to be elite again. They were the number 3 scoring offense last season, but here's another reason why it feels to me like regression to 11-6 is a bit much, and that's still a very good football team. I just think nobody is better prepared to replicate their success than the Eagles because they were better than their 14-3 record last year. They were 14-1 when Jalen Hurts actually played. They were a dominant passing offense, 4th in yards per attempt, and a dominant rushing attack going for over 2,500 yards and 32 touchdowns there. They're incredible situationally, top 4 in 3rd down, 4th down, and red zone percentage. I think you can give a lot of the credit there to Hurts' dominance on the ground and the best offensive line in football. So when I see a top 5 quarterback, one of the best receiving duos in the league, point blank, elite receiving weapons, the best O-line in football. And I agree with you. I think that although I like Miles Sanders a lot, DeAndre Swift is an upgrade as a receiving back, and Rashad Penny, if healthy, might be one of the handful of best runners in the NFL, period. His production is ridiculous. The dude just walks into 6 yards a carry. Now, I don't know if he can stay healthy, but behind this line, he could be dominant. Certainly at a level that Sanders, to me, wasn't capable of. Then defensively, I think obviously losing Hargrave hurts, but Jalen Carter is probably one of the most immediately impactful rookies that you could add to a football team. They add Nolan Smith for even more pass rushing prowess off the edge. And I just think this line, this defensive front and pass rush is sickeningly loaded. You have those two rookies, Fletcher Cox, Brandon Graham, Josh Sweat, Jordan Davis, Hassan Reddick coming down as an outside linebacker. It's one of the best pass rushes ever. I think it is actually the best of our lifetime. They just had 70 sacks, man, the third most ever, and they arguably got more talented this year, even with the loss of Hargrave. They have an elite corner tandem with Slay and Bradbury. I like the injection of talent you get from Keely Ringo in the draft, too. This was the #1 pass defense last year by total yards and yards per attempt when you blend that sort of historically great pass rush with great corner play. So I don't like the fact that they lost TJ Edwards. I don't think their linebacker unit is particularly good, and I'm a little bit worried about them losing both starting safeties. But I think it is difficult to overstate how dominant this front is, how much better it is than all of the other great fronts and great pass rushes in the league today, and how that is just clearly the most important thing as a foundation to a great defense, in my opinion. And then with that corner tandem, I absolutely think they'll be elite defensively again. So I think the offense can only be better. I think they've retained every important piece, considering that I really like what they've done with the running back room. And now Hurts is hopefully not going to miss a couple games. And then defensively, I think they just did a great job of filling all the holes that they had come up. So I have them going 14-3.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I look at any matchup. It's a tough schedule. To me, the Eagles are the favorite against anybody if you were to put them on a neutral field. I just think they're the most talented team in football, period, clearly.
Is this the best defense in football this next season?
I think it's certainly on in the conversation, but I don't think there's a team that is going to blend elite defense with elite offense like Philly, because I think that their offense is probably even better than their defense. I think they'll be top 5 on both sides of the ball.
And that's why I say, too, I think that I have them winning 11 games. I still think this is a team that is built exceptionally well for the playoffs. Again, if they stay healthy, it's hard. It's hard getting back. I read out the teams that have been to back-to-back Super Bowls. It is extremely hard to get to one Super Bowl. Obviously, it's even harder to go back-to-back. I may take the Eagles again out of the NFC, man. Like I said, with the Dallas' track record, even though I have them coming out with the same record, I really do think Philly still might be my favorite out of the NFC. The safeties is my only concern, Carson. That is my only real major red flag, just because I don't love Terrell in coverage, and that's my only red flag about this team. But I think they definitely have a case as potentially the league's best defense next season. Maybe I like Pittsburgh a lot too. I don't know if Pittsburgh is. We're not nearly as talented as Philly. We have playmakers. I think I would probably say Philly's probably going to be my #1 defense. There's a lot of good. That's what's tough, man, about this division too, dude, is I think you're looking at every one of these defenses out of these 4 teams too is like top half of the league. That's what also makes this tough. Right now, again, we're going to be doing standings, official standings. We're going to do award picks, and we're going to do playoff picks on our next episode on Monday. Tentatively right now, though, I'd probably say I think I have Philly as my NFC favorite.
They are incredibly dominant, and to blend a roster that is this elite on both sides of the ball with flat-out top 5 quarterback play, I think that there is no question about that. Obviously, Hurts is one of the most dominant rushing threats that we've ever seen, but his efficiency as a passer, his ability to also create dynamic plays without making mistakes. I mean, the dude is really exceptionally good, and the Super Bowl was the epitome of that. So I could not pick anybody else above them right now in the NFC. I think they are that good. So, also, I'm not worried about them losing their coordinators. Jonathan Gannon can go be a freak in Arizona if he wants.
Oh, man. I can't wait till we get into that.
Took the bus to work this morning. Buddy, most of your players are millionaires. But yeah, we'll talk about the Cardinals in a bit. So who do you have third here?
Third, I have the New York Giants, and I'm sorry, Donnie. Friend of the show, Michael Donahue. I love you, brother. I'm just not buying into Daniel Jones. I'm sorry, man. This has been probably my most heavily criticized take over the offseason. I got absolutely flambéed by the Nerd Sesh faithful in the Discord. I was flambéed by the BDGE boys. I was flambéed on TikTok. You guys can check us out there. Check out the link in our bio on TikTok at Nerd Sesh if you want to join the Discord, if you want to check out some more of our content, talk some ball with us there. I got into a heated discussion a couple weeks back about Daniel Jones and where he ranks because on our podcast, Trivia Time with BDGE, I said that Daniel Jones was probably a bottom 5 quarterback in all of football. I'm not a Daniel Jones guy. I'm not a Daniel Jones guy. I don't think he's bottom 5. I think he's bottom 10, but I'm just not a Daniel Jones guy. He has the 6th most turnovers since 2019, the 2nd most fumbles since 2019, and the most fumbles lost total since 2019. And I know people want to praise what he did last season, how he was able to protect the football, right? He only has 6 interceptions. He's really good at managing the game. That's my fundamental issue with Daniel Jones. I just think at his best, you're looking at a guy who is an offensive limiter, a guy that cannot propel you to great offensive heights in the playoffs when you need a big play, when you need a big drive, when you need something extra on top instead of just managing it, right? That's my fundamental issue with Daniel Jones is I just don't think he's really exceptional at anything. Yeah, he's a decent dual threat, but he's turnover prone. I think he's fundamentally oblivious in the pocket, and I think Brian Daboll just cleaned him up to make him average and to simplify the offense. To me, it's like I just think Daniel Jones' success last season is more of a testament to Brian Daboll and how he can simplify an offense than it is to Daniel Jones. So I get there's way more wide receiver talent in the room. I think that is a big overhaul, and I hope that helps Danny Dimes. I just don't think he's a game changer, man, and I think that's what limits New York for me. Like, if Saquon isn't out there, is this offense really going to be above average? Because I think this defense can be great, Carson. All of this, I have the Giants going 7-10. I think they're going to be kind of an average team. I really like the defensive unit. I think Kayvon Thibodeau is going to take a massive leap. He was great over the back half of the season. That's where I really see big strides for the New York Giants defense. I mean, the Giants defense was great down the stretch last year. So I think you're looking at a unit that could be top 10, fringe top 10 there. I just think you're looking at an average Giants offensive unit if Saquon Barkley doesn't play. And again, I just think Daniel Jones is such a limiter. He's not a great guy at pushing the ball downfield. He's not super dynamic. I just think Danny Dimes is kind of a bum. Like, I don't know, man. I'm not a Daniel Jones guy. That's really what limits the Giants from being great for me, dude. So, I don't know. I mean, I guess if Brian Daboll can take him up another notch, awesome. I will buy into the New York Giants. I will buy all the Giants stock I can. I just don't see another level that Daniel Jones can reach as a quarterback. I think if you're looking at 20 TDs, 12 turnovers, 4,000 total yards of offense, I think that's kind of the max that you're getting out of Daniel Jones. I don't think that's a team that's going to make noise in the playoffs, and I certainly don't think that's a team that's going to be great in the regular season. So I just don't anticipate Daniel Jones getting a lot better, and I think that's what needs to happen for the Giants to crack the code and to be great. So that's why I have the Giants going 7-10, man. It is a fundamental disbelief in Daniel Jones, man. I just do not buy into him as a above-average starting quarterback.
So I think that Danny Dimes is very divisive, and I think that people are a bit extreme on both sides of the issue. There are the people who put him into top 10 conversations, which I think is overrating a couple of really good performances that he's had, and frankly is probably just a product of him being the quarterback of the Giants and them having such a massive impact. And obviously they made the playoffs, and he played very well in the wild card game against the Vikings. Very, very well. At the same time, I think that if you are putting him in the bottom 5 conversation, you are absolutely insane. That to me is totally unjustifiable. And I think he is in the range of average. To me, some of the stats that you threw out there about the turnover totals are a bit unfair because I think that we saw a legitimate shift in him this year. I thought that he did a much better job of taking care of the football, which historically had been a massive problem. He had the lowest interception percentage in football last year. That is a complete 180 from what he had been previously, but I do think with Daboll there, with his development, with now significantly improved weapons, something closer to that is sustainable. And I also think you're underselling how dynamic of a rushing threat he is. This is a guy who went for over 700 yards and 7 touchdowns on the ground and shredded the Vikings in a playoff game. And while I agree with you, he is largely a game manager. I don't view him as the most dynamic creator in terms of with his arm, but I thought down the home stretch of last season, in both games against Minnesota in those last few weeks, he did push the ball down the field. He was confident. He was making big-time throws. So I'm not super high on Danny Dimes, but I think he's solid. And I think that if you have a guy who is a game manager, but who limits mistakes and then is also very athletic, that's a pretty solid formula when you're a talented football all around. I also do think we have to talk about the fact that his receiving weapons have pretty much sucked since he got into the league.
That's fair.
And now they could actually be good with the development of Isaiah Hodgins. Darius Slayton, I think, is solid. I really like Jalen Hyatt's potential as a dynamic guy who maybe can unlock a bit more of that big play potential. And then Darren Waller, if he can stay healthy, Darren Waller is a number 1 receiver. Now, he hasn't been quite as productive when healthy over the last 2 years, and he's only played 20 games in those last 2 years, but a truly rare combination of speed and technical route running while being 6'6", 250, man. So I don't think it's great weapons, but I think it's gone from being really bad to okay. And now he's got a better offensive mind. So things are definitely working in his favor more than they have previously. Overall, this still was not a good pass attack last year, though. They were 26 in terms of total yards, 27 in terms of yards per attempt. I do think there will be some improvement. I still think it's a slightly below average passing attack. And I think that Danny Dimes is a below average pure thrower of the football when we're talking about starting quarterbacks. But I do think the run game is going to be really good. It was top 5 across the board last year. So I think we're looking at a mediocre offense overall. I don't think they're going to be dynamic there, but I think they'll be within the range that they were last year. And then defensively, Lawrence and Williams is a great duo. I think they've improved their depth up front this offseason. This was already a good pass rush, 6th in pressure rate last year. You mentioned with a Thibodeau leap, with a full season of Azeez Ojulari, could be a really good pass rush. They add Deonte Banks to help with the cornerback situation, which has not been good. They had a starting linebacker in Bobby Okereke. So I think this defense is going to be improved as well. They were still very bad against the run last year. I don't love this defense outside of the front 4, which is definitely far and away their strength, but I think they've taken strides. So I'm higher on the Giants than you are. I think they are definitely a better team on paper than last year. I think their weapons are better. I think they have a couple good additions on that defense, but they also, to me, overachieved last season and weren't quite as good as their win total would suggest, and they cooled down as the year went along. They got that playoff win over the Vikings, but the Vikings sucked, as we've talked about before, so inferior to their record. The Giants finished last year 3-6-1 down the stretch. Obviously, they got just dominated by the Eagles after that Vikings game. They were 2-7 versus teams who were 500 or better, and they have a pretty tough schedule with one of the best divisions in football and the NFC West and the AFC East, which is also one of the best divisions in football. So I'm pretty split between 8-9 and 9-8 for them. I'm going to give them 9-8 because I think they've, to me, in terms of talent, come a pretty far away from last year, and I think they're really well coached. So that'll give them a little bit of maybe an extra win in my eyes. I do not think they compete with Dallas or Philly in terms of the top-end talent here, but I think that you're underselling them a little bit.
Well, here's my thing. Like I said, it hinges on Daniel Jones. If Daniel Jones has a repeat of last year or improves on last year, I think this could be a 9-win or 10-win team, excuse me. Like I said, I have them at 7-10 right now, but I even think you're underselling the defense a little bit. Now, I agree with you on one point. I don't like the linebacking core, and that scares me a lot because, again, if you're getting run on, there's just certain teams with great units that are going to trounce you there. But everywhere else, I love the Giants. I love the front 4. As you mentioned, Ojulari, Thibodeau, the two men in the middle. Oh my gosh, dude. Dexter Lawrence and Leonard Williams. I mean, it doesn't get a lot better than that. And then when you look at the secondary, look, I know they weren't great for the entirety of the year. The secondary, second Adoree. The secondary and Adoree Jackson, he looked a lot better down the stretch, and I think with the reinforcements that they got, Xavier McKinney was great down the stretch too, but especially Deonte Banks, man. I think Deonte Banks is going to step in day one and be a game changer for the secondary. So with improvement or stagnation from Jones, I think that this team could win 9 or 10 games. But tough division, tough schedule. And again, I want to see one more year of it from DJ before I'm like, okay, this is the guy he is. I just need to see one more year of it before I'm going to fully buy into this is who Daniel Jones can be moving forward.
I get it, but I think that you're a bit too harsh on him overall. We'll see, though. This is always the trouble with these great divisions. Somebody's got to suck. I don't think it's the Giants, though. I think they're a good enough football team that they're going to hold up. We both have Washington, the Commanders, last in the division. Why is it that you have them here?
Well, we can start organizationally how poor Washington's been. I hope this is the turning of a new leaf with the selling of the team, with Dan Snyder finally at a time. I hope this is, you take that 1,000-pound ball that's been strapped to your ankle and you finally get it removed. Like, I hope this is the start of a new era for the Washington Commanders. That being said, a part of that new era is Sam Howell taking over. And I like Sam Howell. I like Sam Howell quite a bit. Like, to me, man, this is a funny comp. Carson, I think he's Mitch Trubisky with a brain. And what I mean by that is I just think Howell reads the field. I think he processes the game at a higher level. Watching Trubisky's like moving in slow-mo out there, man. He reads half the field, and then it's over. Somehow 4 seconds have passed, and he still has the ball in his hands. Howell reads the field really well. He scans really well. He just processes the game at a high level. I really like his awareness. I like his pocket presence. That being said, I mean, we haven't seen a whole lot in preseason. Handful of drives, 265 yards, 3 TDs, no picks. It seems like the enemy has made up some really easy, quick reads for him where he's not having to make a lot of tough decisions. It's, boom, there's my guy. Let's hit him for 5 yards. So I think that the enemy is going to simplify things. He's going to make it a little easier on Howell. And again, I think Howell's dynamic enough to make plays, to extend plays out of the pocket, to move, to run, to scramble when he needs to. I think he can be a decent game manager. And so I'm excited at the prospect of Sam Howell. And then when we get to the weapons, though, I like the weapons that are around him, man. Curtis Samuel, Jahan Dotson, Terry McLaurin, Logan Thomas. I think it's a solid unit. I worry about the O-line. I don't know how great they're going to be. I think they're going to be okay there. And then defensively, you got playmakers. This is a really underwhelming defense last season, Carson, specifically because of Jonathan Allen and Chase Young. And I know that Chase Young struggled with injuries last season. I think this defense could be great if Chase Young can stay healthy and they can get consistent pressure on the quarterback. Because you look at Washington's defense and you look at the name value, man. Montez Sweat, Jonathan Allen, Chase Young. And you think, man, this should be like the best pass rush in all of football. And they were okay. If Washington can reach those heights, I mean, I think they could again. I love all the defenses in this division. I think they are all above average, and I think they are all fighting for fringe top 10. That is what I see with Washington. I think they could be that great. This was the best third down defense in football last season. Again, you've got a lot of talent in the middle. They lose Cole Holcomb to the Steelers, but they replace him with Cody Barton, who I really like. He sung the praises of this defense. He says, this defense is going to be great. This is the best unit that I've ever been a part of. And then they add Emmanuel Forbes in the draft to add on to the secondary. So, yeah, I mean, I think at their best, I think this defense could be top 10 level if this pass rush is one of the best in the league. But, again, considering that they weren't that great last year, they lose some pieces, I think they'll be about slightly above average defensively, and I think you're looking at a below-average offense that is a little bit limited by Howell because I don't think he's a great downfield threat. I don't think the offensive talent is crazy. I think it's good where they can be an average passing attack. I think the offensive line is subpar. And again, this division in this schedule is just kind of tough. So it's tough for me to see a big drop off from Washington when I do actually think that they improve talent wise. I have them winning 6 games just because, like you said, Carson, somebody in the division's got to suck. They can't all win 10 games. I love the Commanders. I think they're talented. I hope this is the step in a right direction post Dan Snyder, but I got them winning 6 games. I think they're more talented than 6 wins, but again, somebody's got to lose football games.
I have them winning 6 games as well, and I think I'm a little bit higher on this defense than you are because I was pretty impressed with how they performed last year, basically not having Chase Young. I mean, the guy played 3 games, and still, this defense was actually number 1 in yards allowed per drive, and they were the number 1 third down unit. I think it is going to be one of the most dominant pass rushes in football. They were above average last year without the guy who should be their most dominant force there, but Payne and Allen and Sweat and Chase Young, that is a scary combination. Now, I don't think the defense is great outside of that, but I think that that front is going to carry them to be, I would say, pretty solidly above average on that side of the football. But I am worried about the offense. I don't think that going to Sam Howell from Taylor Heineke is a real upgrade to me. There are traits that I like with Howell. I like his pocket presence. He can move, but he's not a guy who is going to resort to that too often in situations where he should be hanging in the pocket. I do think he's composed. I don't think he's a guy who's too mistake prone. He did have a really horrible interception in his lone regular season start last year, but overall I think he makes pretty good decisions with the football. I just see no upside, man. Like, to me, the mobility isn't a difference maker. I don't think he's super accurate, actually, and luckily he has good receivers here because I think that guys have to adjust on balls that are pretty routine from him too often, and I think his arm talent is totally underwhelming. So I think he is a guy who's going to be one of the bottom 5 starters this year, and the receivers are good, but we'll see how much they can elevate him. Like, Terry is great. Dotson and Samuel are very solid. I still think it's going to be a pretty bad passing attack, though. And I like Brian Robinson a lot, but this rushing attack, he missed some time last year, but still was 28th in yards per attempt because the line sucks. And there's really no threat of the pass that has to be feared at any high level. And there's a lot of turnover with this line, too. So bringing in Bieniemy, you get a little bit more creativity, a good offensive mind, but I think there is very, very little offensive upside here. If this wasn't one of the bottom 8 offenses in football, I would be pretty surprised. And that's what they were last year. They, to me, were lucky to be a 500 team. They're too limited offensively. And I think that their defense will make up for some of that, but it is not, to me, the sort of elite all-around defense that could carry them. And I don't think they have the sort of elite skill position talent to make up for a bad line and, in my opinion, a bad starting quarterback. So 6 wins feels right to me.
Yeah, and I think when you look at below average starting quarterbacks or guys who are really going to be maximized by their talent, right? For example, like we have the Atlanta Falcons. How many games did you have them winning, Carson, exactly? I believe I had them at 9.
I had them at 8.
You had them at 8. For example, right, Desmond Ridder is in just a much better situation where I can see that offense being great with London, with Pitts, with Robinson, with all those guys there. So that's really the big distinction to me. Like, I don't love Tua, right? But Tua has Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill. To really elevate a guy like Sam Howell, I think you need top-end, elite receiving corps, elite skill talent. And again, I love Terry McLaurin. Terry has been successful with whatever quarterback that you give him, and I think he's going to be great again. But it's not like Terry is Terry's great, but it's not like there's a ton of depth here that can really, really elevate in offense with such a limited quarterbacks. I think you're right, but I don't know. I hope Howell performs well this year. I hope he can be the franchise guy. I don't really see it right now, but again, that's why they play the games, man. So I'm hopeful for Washington, but I don't really see it either.
I also think with the Ridder comparison, which to me is more appropriate because Tua, of course, is in a great situation, but he's in a different tier than those guys as a pure talent. To me, Ridder and Howell are both like going to be bottom 5 starters this year. I actually like Howell a little bit more than Ritter. The difference to me isn't as much receiving weapons as it is line play and as it is the ability to rely heavily on the run game. Because Atlanta's going to run the football more than anybody else in the league, and they're going to be damn good at it. I just don't think Howell is going to have that sort of weapon to lean on, and that makes his job a whole lot harder.